Welcome EHS 300 to a lecture on private cisterns, private wells, how they're established, and how to disinfect or treat a public water or a private water system. So we're going to focus on private water systems still in this video. And in this image, this shows a cistern, which is a hollow piece of plastic in this case. They can be concrete and a lot of other things, being lowered with a backhoe into the ground. And this will provide drinking water, potentially, for this home or be a backup supply for this home in the background. In this set of notes, we're going to focus on some on-site drinking water options, some methods for disinfection. We may not get into the disinfection in this particular video, but that's on the horizon. So when we establish a private well or a cistern at a property, the well or the cistern needs to be there to meet the needs of the number of residents as well as livestock. And if it's a new well being constructed or a new home being constructed, there's going to be approvals that need to be obtained by the health department and by the state, usually the state government. Once the well is built or the cistern is installed, it's typically not regulated by any agency once the ownership is taken over. So when you build a well, usually a state division of water in either a natural resources or an environmental protection agency of a state government will regulate the drill, like the driller. So the person that actually drills it. We don't do many dug wells anymore in the United States. So when the well is drilled, the state needs to know about it. And they're concerned about making sure there's enough water for everyone. Now, secondly, the departments of health at the local, which could include the county or the city or metro health department, is also going to need to know about any wells because they determine if the water is potable or not. That may impact whether or not somebody's going to be able to live there. Because if there isn't potable water, then the water isn't available. The health department is not going to let people live there. If it's a new home construction, you better make sure that the well can be constructed and have sufficient water before you start getting too far along and let's build our well or build our house. So you have to have a reliable source of water. And different health departments have different rules. The EPA and the feds aren't involved in this. All right, so it must meet the needs on the number of residents and livestock. So generally speaking, if you've got 5 people living in the home, that well needs to be able to provide 500 gallons of water per day. If there's a cistern, it's going to have to be pretty large because it's going to have at least that much water for storage capacity per day. But if you have to fill up a cistern every day for a week, I mean, you're looking at 3,000 gallons of water. So the absence of not having running water presents public health challenges. It was just in the news today about some of these unique public health challenges from not having access to water. Here I've brought up a story from National Public Radio from NPR, and then there's the news article here, just came out, that says as coronavirus cases rise, Navajo Nation tries to get ahead of the pandemic. And one of the things that's in this article is people are concerned about not being able to wash their hands. A good part of this guy's day is spent hauling water for his family and livestock in 55-gallon barrels, and he's concerned about how he's supposed to wash his hands to avoid the spread of coronavirus. It's a lot of water is what he's talking about. And right now, 40% of the Navajo Nation does not have running water or indoor plumbing. And this guy, Deal, he lives in Black Mesa next to a coal mine that shut down late last year, and the Peabody coal mine took all their water, he says. And they also have problems with uranium in their water and some other issues. So with that said, health departments don't like having people living in areas where they don't have access to running water. And the Navajo situation is unique, and there's a lot of history and injustice issues related to how the Navajo have had to deal with trying to stay where they're at. And I'm not going to get into too much detail in that for this particular class, but having access to water is very important from a public health perspective for everything from as simple as washing your hands to having food for bathing and laundry. And even if you had to engage in social distancing measures, without having to leave the home all the time to get water. So the lack of a reliable source of water is a challenge. Health departments are going to let people just start living somewhere without access to water. And then if there's animals that also have to be fed, you saw that and you have to get water. You saw that in the Navajo article I just pulled up. They mentioned the animals. So health departments will take that into consideration as well. How many people are going to live at the home when they're permitting a house? If it's not able to have public water and it's going to rely on private water, they're going to look at the number of bedrooms and how many people they expect to live there. Then they're going to also look at whether or not the well can have sufficient yield. The word yield, Y-I-E-L-D, refers to the amount of water that that particular well or that spring can produce. And yields can be measured in hours or days. So there's a lot of things that go into that. All right, so some different sources of individual water supplies that are out there. Somebody may have a cistern, which essentially captures the rainwater and stores it. Some people may have a cistern that they haul water into and fill it up when the rainwater isn't sufficient, but cisterns capture rainwater, usually roof water. They may have access to a natural spring, maybe a dug hole in the ground that we might call a pond, or they have access to a natural lake. And then we've got our groundwater options, speaking not so much of the spring being one, but groundwater in the sense of wells in particular. So a groundwater option, if properly developed, is a great choice. Most of the United States has access to groundwater. It's usually an endless supply. Nobody's checking the quality for you. You have to do that yourself. Access is attained by developing a well. If you've got good quality water and you protect what's going on around it, you may not have to test it as often. You obtain access through developing the well, and then it's really important that you do a good job choosing where you place the well. Cisterns are another alternative. Sometimes cisterns are under a house or under a garage, like in the case of where I grew up, which wouldn't be good because chemicals from the garage can get into the cistern because it's not a leak-proof seal around that manhole cover. Usually they're outside on the underside of the house somewhere, outside covered with ground, but it collects the rainwater off the roof. All the water from the gutters go there, and you can have rainwater access. Cisterns are often made out of either big concrete, structures. They're, huge. Some of them are huge, some are smaller. So these big concrete things can go underground that store the water. There's also plastic ones that are becoming more popular because of they're cheaper and easier to move. Cisterns can also supplement public water supply needs. Cisterns can be used in a lot of ways. Cisterns are viewed as a form of green engineering. Green referring to they don't require as much energy. So if you can capture all the roof water and fill the cistern up and use that for watering plants or for other household uses, that could save the community money because it costs a lot of money to pump water up and down hills from the water plant, into a water tower to where it then pumps somewhere else and then pumps up to another water tower. So it takes a lot of energy to move water from a water plant to a person's home. By having a cistern where you collect the water nearby, then that can save a lot of energy costs. So it makes it a green form of engineering, or it's a green technology. In some parts of the world, it's all they have access to. So this is actually my former student, Peter Sagal. This is his home. He grew up drinking the cistern water. They capture it off the rooftops of their homes. and their cistern is underground, and it's literally a hole in the ground that they've covered with wood to keep the animals and rodents and things like that out of it. One of the challenges is sometimes the roofs that you're capturing the water off of may have problems. So you get paint flecks or things that the animals may have left up there. And here's a picture of Peter with a USAID constructed tank, I believe. And these tanks, this one was almost 20 years old at the time when we did this picture. And actually maybe 25 years old at the time of that picture. And, that's what his community relies upon. And this cistern was above ground, and it's open at the top, and water just runs into it. And there's a spigot on the side of this that people can get water from. It fills up during the rainy season, and then people can get water from it during the dry season. As I said before, if you're collecting roof water may contain a lot from birds and rodents. And birds and rodents can shed fecal matter, as you would expect. They may spend more time on the rooftops, staying away from potential predators, and they can watch and see everything going on up there. So you can imagine that roofs can sometimes present challenges for contamination. So how do we deal with the contamination? So it is recommended that we disinfect our roof water, and in some cases, if it's an emergency situation, that we are able to disinfect the water. So we'll speak more to how do you disinfect the water here in these next videos, but it's good for us to know that by disinfecting the water, we can make the water safer for us to drink, obviously. And how many gallons of Clorox does 1 gallon of Clorox disinfect? We're going to cover that here in these next videos. Other than cisterns, what are some alternatives other than well water for getting water on site in cisterns? What's an alternative? So we'll cover that here in the future. Maybe they already have an existing pond, or maybe they have a natural spring, or maybe they truck the water in. Where do cisterns get their water? That's generally from the rooftop, rainwater. Are private water supplies regulated? Are private drinking water supplies regulated? So the construction is regulated, maybe the first test, but after that, there is no regulation. Why are cisterns considered a green option? Why would they be considered a green option? And it's because they really don't require all that energy that goes from moving water from a public water system up and down a series of pipes, and in some cases up and down a series of water towers. How many gallons per day are required for a home? So that would vary based upon how many people live at the home, but generally speaking, a home of 5 would need at least how much water just for meeting the bathing and cooking and cleaning needs? A home of 5. So 5 times 100 gallons per person per day, looking at 500 gallons per day according to kind of the standards for the United States. And then eventually you're going to be looking at how do we disinfect water from potentially a cistern or during an emergency situation. And you're going to calculate the amount of Clorox that's needed. And then lastly, I'm going to pull up an image of an underground cistern in Houston, and I've heard a few other cities have these. So it's just kind of a cool image. So the city of Houston used to gather a lot of rainwater and capture it and keep it underneath of the city. And they have this area called the Bayou Park Cistern. And I'll just show you a little clip from the Bayou Park Cistern for your viewing. So here's some art done where they actually do some light shows and things, and people can get a tour of this historic underground cistern. Very cool. So if you're ever in the Houston area, I should ask Dr. Pinion if he's ever been to this huge underground area. People go there and do photography and all kinds of stuff. So very interesting place. So that's all for this video. I'm going to stop it here. And again, if you have any questions, you can always contact me at jason.marion@dku.edu or call or text me as needed. So I hope the rest of your day goes well. I'm going to upload another video here shortly on drinking water disinfection for emergency situations and for disinfecting cistern or even potentially well water.